This happened a few days ago. I'm 35 and a wildlife photographer. I love the quiet of nature. I thought a secluded national park would be the perfect escape. The woods were beautiful. I set up my camp by a calm lake. Everything felt peaceful at first. I hoped to get some great shots. That night, as I worked on my camera settings by the fire, I heard something. It started as a soft rustling in the bushes nearby. I thought maybe it was a deer or raccoon, so I shrugged it off. But I felt a nagging unease. I tried to focus on my camera again. The next day I wandered around looking for photo opportunities. I kept seeing shadows dart between the trees. I thought I was imagining things. Odd sounds bounced around the woods like whispers. The air felt cold and I shivered. I didn't know what was happening. Later my camera started acting weird. That made me anxious. I've used this equipment for years, and now it was malfunctioning. It felt like the woods were messing with me. I tried to brush it off, but then I stumbled upon some old hunting remains. The scattered bones were disturbing. It made my stomach churn. That night I met some hunters by my campfire. At first I thought it would be a good distraction, but they spoke in hushed voices. They shared stories about strange experiences in these woods. One guy whispered about a creature lurking through the trees. I wasn't sure if I believed them. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me after everything I saw. As the nights passed, the tension grew. I felt eyes on me. I heard footsteps outside my tent. I told myself it was an animal. I could hardly sleep. Then one night, I heard the rustling again. My heart raced. I turned to look outside the tent. The noise stopped. There was nothing there. But then I heard a voice behind me. "Why are you here?" My blood ran cold. I turned back. Nobody was there. I felt frozen. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Those woods were hiding something. Fear gripped me. I decided I couldn't stay in that tent anymore. I needed to confront whatever was out there. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. The night was dark and heavy. I took a deep breath and called out, "Who's there?" The trees whispered back. I held my breath, straining for a reply. Then I heard it again. "Why are you here?" The voice sounded closer, more urgent. My palms were sweaty. I scanned the darkness, heart pounding. I needed to know. "Show yourself!" I yelled, my voice shaking. The wind picked up. Through the trees, shadows twisted and danced. I felt my courage fading. Suddenly I saw a figure emerge. It was tall and shrouded in darkness. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. "What do you want?" I stammered. It felt like the forest itself was answering back, but I couldn't understand it. The shadows loomed closer. Each heartbeat echoed loudly in my ears. I knew I might never find out what this was, but I had to try. What lived in those woods? I needed answers, even if they cost me everything. My breath caught as the figure stepped forward. It loomed over me, its shape indistinct in the darkness, as if the shadows had taken form. I couldn't see any details, just a heavy presence that filled the air with an intensity I couldn't ignore. My heart raced, and I felt that coldness creeping back, enveloping me like a shroud. "What do you want?" I repeated, panic rising in my throat. I wanted to stumble backward, to retreat into the safety of my tent, but something held me there, rooted to the spot. The figure seemed to hesitate, sensing my fear. Then in a whisper that sounded like the rustling leaves, it responded, "You shouldn't have come here." The voice echoed in my mind, chilled me to my core. My pulse raced. I wanted to run, but I was locked in place. "Why?" I finally managed to ask, though it felt pointless. The thing in front of me gave no answer. Instead, it pointed towards the trees, and my eyes instinctively followed. In the process, I caught a glimpse of something moving behind the figure. A flash of white. Something that looked like bones. My stomach lurched. I turned my focus back to the shadow, but it was already fading back into the trees. "Wait!" I shouted, but the figure had vanished. Just like that, It was gone, swallowed by the night. I felt the darkness close in around me, heavy with unspoken threats. I stumbled back to my tent, the flashlight trembling in my hand. My mind raced. I couldn't trust what I saw. I told myself it was exhaustion playing tricks. But deep down, I knew something was very wrong in those woods. I sat on the edge of my sleeping bag, trying to gather my thoughts. The stories the hunters had told me played on repeat in my mind, each one more chilling than the last. One of the men had talked about a strange creature that roamed the area, a figure that lured people deeper into the forest, never to return. Another had spoken in a hushed tone about an eerie silence that fell over the land, followed by an overwhelming sense of dread. As I replayed those stories, a thought struck me. What if the figure I saw was connected to those tales? What if it was warning me? I needed to know more. I couldn't just pack up and leave. I needed answers. The sun would rise soon, and I had a decision to make. I could either leave this haunted place or investigate further. I felt pulled toward the latter. There was something out there that needed understanding. But what if it was too dangerous? Taking a deep breath, I decided. I would return to where I saw the figure. I would find out what secret the woods were hiding. But as I sat in the tent, another sound pierced the silence. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, came from just outside. I froze, heart racing again. My previous resolve faltered. Whatever I had seen before was now no longer a curious shadow, but a potential threat standing mere feet from me. I reached for my flashlight, ready to shine it outside, when darkness engulfed me once more, and the footsteps stopped. I could feel it. Someone, or something, was watching, and I wasn't sure how much time I had left. The silence deepened after the footsteps stopped. My heart pounded, each beat echoing in my ears like a warning bell. I waited, breath held, the oppressive darkness pressing in around me. I wanted to call out, to demand whoever or whatever was out there to show itself. But the fear stilled my voice. I reminded myself of the flashlight in my hand. I had to be brave. I had to know what was lurking outside my tent. Slowly I pulled the flashlight up, my fingers trembling. I trained its beam at the zippered opening, hesitant to pierce the veil of the night. With a shaky breath, I unzipped the flap and pushed it aside. The beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating the space just outside my tent. But there was nothing there, only the eerie stillness of the forest, as if it held its breath in suspense. I stepped out cautiously, scanning the area. Something felt off. The air was thick, heavy with an unshakable dread. I didn't know what I was expecting to find, but the absence of movement only heightened my anxiety. Had I imagined the footsteps? Had the figure been a figment of my overactive imagination? Then I noticed it. A trail of broken branches led away from my campsite and deeper into the woods. The kind of path that suggested someone, or something, had pushed through recently. My heart sank as I contemplated following it. The stories the hunters told flashed in my mind, warning me to stay away. But curiosity got the better of me. With every step I took, the world around me felt more unwelcoming. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their gnarled roots twisting ominously beneath the underbrush. I followed the trail, heart pounding, my flashlight illuminating the darkness ahead. The deeper I ventured, the fewer signs of life I saw. A chill wrapped around me. That's when I saw it. At the base of an ancient towering oak, something gleamed in the beam of my flashlight. I hesitated, the blood rushing in my ears as apprehension washed over me. I moved closer, and the light revealed it clearly. A small, weathered journal, its pages yellowed and stained with age. It looked out of place, sitting there in the dirt. I picked it up, brushing off the leaves and soil. The cover was frayed, but I could make out a name etched in the leather. Ethan Hawthorne. My stomach twisted at the thought. I recognized that name from the local legends. Ethan was one of the hunters who had vanished years ago, lost in these very woods. I opened it, desperate for answers. The handwriting was frantic, scrawled in a way that caught my eye. The last entry sent chills down my spine. It knows I'm here. I can feel it watching me. I must escape. Panic surged through me. If Ethan had noticed something in these woods, what had it been? Suddenly, the air shifted, and I felt the weight of unseen eyes on my back. I whipped around, flashlight darting through the shadows. But nothing was there. Only the sound of my own breathing filled the night. Just as I began to digest what I found, another noise echoed through the trees, a low growl. It vibrated in my bones. I froze, adrenaline coursing through me, and the journal slipped from my grasp, falling to the forest floor as instinct took over. I ran. Whatever was in the woods with me was no longer content to watch. It was time to confront the truth behind the tales. I stumbled back toward camp, scrambling in a panic, but the feeling of being chased gripped me tight. Something was out there, and now it was close. I raced through the dense underbrush, branches clawing at my arms and legs, like the desperate hands of the forest trying to pull me back. The growl echoed again, closer this time, a primal warning that sent sharp flares of fear through my veins. I pushed myself harder, forcing my legs to move as fast as they could. Each crackle of leaves behind me fueled my panic, urging me forward. The flashlight's beam flickered over the familiar path back to my campsite, but my mind was struggling to keep up. How could I have been so foolish? What did that journal mean? Questions spiraled in my head, but all I could focus on was the thundering sound of footsteps pursuing me. When I burst back into my clearing, my heart sank. The tent stood there, but it felt wrong, like it had become a part of the darkness that surrounded it. I tore through the entrance and grabbed my backpack, cramming it with frantic desperation. I had to get out. I had come here looking for adventure, but all I felt now was dread. Suddenly a loud crash echoed from behind the tent. I jerked around, breath hitting in my throat. The weight of that growl was still weighing on me, but this noise was something different. It was louder, more violent. It made me think of the hunter's warnings about the shadows in the woods. Stay away. I barely whispered the phrase to myself, recalling the cautions they had shared around the campfire. I stepped outside, flashlight trembling in my grip. The woods were now a patchwork of blackness and shadows. I strained to see if anything was coming for me. If something had made that noise, it was lurking nearby. My intuition screamed to leave, but the thought of being caught off guard again terrified me more. As I turned, I stumbled across the journal lying in the dirt, reminding me of Ethan. I hesitated, but before I could make a decision, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I swung the flashlight toward the sound, and there it was, a dark figure, partially hidden behind the trees, merging into the shadows. It wasn't just a trick of the light. I froze, a sense of recognition crashing over me as it stepped forward, revealing a silhouette that made my skin crawl. It was tall and thin, limbs too long, and a head that tilted at an odd angle, as if it was studying me. Whatever it was, it didn't seem human. I wanted to scream, to run again, but fear had me paralyzed. It felt like a long moment passed, the unblinking gaze piercing into me. Then, without warning, it turned and melted back into the trees. I couldn't wait. I bolted the other way, tearing through the campsite and heading toward the main trail, the faint glow from distant lanterns somehow guiding me. My breath came hard and fast, panic driving me forward, the weight of what I had seen pressing down on my shoulders. Just as I reached the entrance of the path, I heard it again, the growl still hauntingly close. Fear gripped my heart in a vice. I couldn't hear anything else over the pounding in my ears. I had to get away, but then I felt it. A chill washed over me, a sudden stillness in the air. The forest had gone quiet. Something was behind me. I spun around, panic clawing at my throat. The woods loomed, thick with shadows and silence, making the hairs on my arms stand on end. I expected something to leap from the darkness, but there was only the lingering echo of that sinister growl wrapping around me like a cold blanket. My instinct screamed for me to leave, but bold thoughts clashed with fear. What was this creature? What did it want? I never should have come here, alone and unprepared. I had to think. I couldn't just run blindly back down the path. Just as I forced myself to step forward, I heard a rustle, a soft brush of leaves, followed by uneven footsteps. I strained to see, my heart racing as the flashlight beam danced wildly between the trees. That growl was closer now, almost a whisper in the breeze. Whatever it was hunting me. Adrenaline surged, and I pushed myself toward the trail. I needed to reach help. I remembered the stories the hunters told about the woods. A light behind me flickered momentarily, pulling my gaze. My breath caught. It was there again, just on the edge of the light, a figure shifting under the trees, eyes gleaming in the dark. "Stop!" I shouted, my own voice sounding foreign and shaky. But it didn't stop. Instead, it stepped further into the light, revealing a glimpse of something grotesque. Its limbs were too long, muscles rippling under skin that shimmered unnaturally, almost silver in the flashlight's glow. I stumbled backward, desperate to retreat, trying to hold the flashlight steady. That's when I noticed something, a glint in the dirt near my feet. I bent down, breath caught in my throat as I saw the journal again. But this time it was open to a page torn hastily at the edge, words scrawled in a rushed script. Frantic, I tried to read what it said. "The Watcher is not what you think," it read. "It feeds on fear. It knows you better than you know yourself." The growl reverberated around me, growing louder. A low rumble that shook the ground beneath my feet. I recognized the threatening intensity in that sound. The figure was closing in, and I had to make a choice. With one final glance at the journal, I snatched it from the ground and bolted straight for the trail, the flashlight beam illuminating my path. I could feel the tension in the air shift. I was being hunted. As I hastily navigated the familiar turns, the forest around me shifted from eerie silence to unsettling whispers. Almost as if the trees were communicating, I could hear indistinct chants overlapping with the growls, a chilling cacophony that filled my chest with dread. The lantern lights I had seen earlier flickered closer, but just as hope surged, the ground beneath me shifted. I stumbled, hitting the earth hard. In the glow of my flashlight, I saw the outlines of several figures, shapes darting, flitting between trees. They were more than shadows. They were watching. I had to get up. I had to escape. But as I pushed myself off the ground, a hand brushed against my shoulder. A chill snaked up my spine. I spun around, breathless. Then everything went dark. I gasped as I hit the ground. Darkness enveloped me, suffocating and heavy. I was no longer aware of the shapes or the growl. My mind raced faster than my heart. My senses sharpened as I lay there, desperate to gather my thoughts. I still clutched the journal, an odd comfort in the crushing void around me. Slowly I pushed myself up onto my elbows, fighting against the urge to scream. I could feel the cool earth beneath me, the damp scent of moss. I'd fallen near a tree. Where was the figure, and where were the watchers? Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to sit up fully. I swiped the flashlight across my surroundings. The beam barely illuminated the impenetrable darkness of the woods, but I caught movement, a shadow skirting the edge of my light. My brain screamed at me to run, but I was frozen in place. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. "You shouldn't have come here," it said, low and gravelly. My heart raced again. It sounded too close, too familiar. It was one of them, the figures from before. "Who are you?" I managed to choke out, each word heavy with fear. The darkness shifted again, revealing the glint of eyes reflected in my flashlight's beam. They were everywhere, surrounding me, closing in. "We're here to help," the voice said, but it felt disingenuous, like a threadbare lie. "But you need to listen." Confusion swept through me. "Help? From what? What is that creature?" Silence followed for a moment, stretching endlessly until I could feel my pulse thumping in my ears. "The Watcher is not your only threat," the voice finally said. "You're not alone out here." My mind spun with questions. The Watcher and another threat. The journal could hold answers. But what if it only brought more danger? I gripped it in my hands tighter, the words about fear echoing in my mind. Before I could respond, a rumble echoed through the trees, causing the ground to tremble beneath me. I thought of the growl, the way it felt as if the forest itself were alive, a malevolent force. "What was that?" I breathed, panic spilling into my voice. "It's coming," the voice said, almost a whisper now. "You have to trust us, but you must act quickly." A flash of determination surged through me despite the fear. "Trust you? I don't even know if I can trust myself," I shot back. "Then don't think, just go." In an instant the darkness shifted as figures broke through the trees, their forms barely visible but undeniably present. I felt the thrill of fear again, as their intentions were unknown. Without hesitation I scrambled to my feet, heart racing as I looked for an escape. And just like that, I spotted a narrow gap between two trees. It led deeper into the woods, where the darkness seemed less suffocating, a possible path to a way out. It was risky, but staying felt like an inevitable trap. I dashed past the figures, adrenaline pushing me forward toward the gap. As I squeezed through, I glanced back to see the creatures coalesce, their movements quicker than I could comprehend, but they didn't follow. "Remember," the voice cut through as I hurried deeper, "fear cannot be your master." I didn't look back again. The urgency grew with each frantic step, leaving me feeling raw and exposed in the grasp of unseen predators. I needed to find refuge, but the forest seemed to twist around me, shifting the path with every turn. Then, as I rounded another tree, I stumbled into a clearing. I froze. In the moonlight ahead lay something that nearly made my heart stop. A small cabin, broken down and overgrown, its windows dark and inviting. Should I go in, or would this lead me directly to the Watcher? I took one last look at the darkness behind me, that weight of fear creeping ever closer, knowing I had to choose quickly. As I stood in the clearing, the cabin loomed before me like an ancient sentinel. Its roof sagged under the weight of time and neglect. Vines crawled over the wooden planks as if nature itself wanted to reclaim it. I hesitated, torn between the instinct to seek shelter and the dread that came with being in such close quarters with the unknown. I glanced over my shoulder. The figures were no longer visible, but my skin prickled with the feeling that I was still being watched. The woods, with their heavy silence, seemed to conspire against me. I couldn't stay out in the open, not now. The decision made, I stepped toward the cabin, each creak of the floorboards beneath me echoing through the stillness. The door hung ajar, barely hanging on its hinges. I pushed it open, expecting a creak, but it swung silent, as if inviting me in. Inside, darkness clung to the corners, broken only by the beam of my flashlight. The air was stale. Dust motes danced in the light, swirling around me like ghosts. I felt a shiver run down my spine. What was I doing here? I needed answers, but this place felt wrong. The flashlight illuminated an old table in the center, covered in debris and a thick layer of dust. I approached it cautiously, glancing around for any sign that I was not alone. Nothing moved, but the atmosphere felt thick, charged with unspoken histories. Then I noticed a tattered scrap of paper peeking out from underneath a broken chair. I bent down to grab it. The words were jagged and shaky, as if written in haste. "They come at dusk. Don't let them see you. Trust no one." My breath caught in my throat. Who had written this, and what had they seen? I felt a wave of unease wash over me. The journal in my hand suddenly seemed far too heavy. As I unfolded the paper, my heart raced. What was I really involved in? Before I could gather my thoughts, a soft rustling broke the silence outside. I held my breath, frozen in place. Footsteps. Not just one pair, multiple. My heart pounded in my chest. The warning from the note echoed in my mind. Don't let them see you. I dropped the paper back to the table, tiptoeing toward a window. I dared to peek outside, my heart racing. Shadows moved among the trees, low and deliberate. The 5 figures I had passed earlier emerged from the darkness, their stances tense and alert. It was as if they were searching for me. I pulled back from the window. Panic surged through me. They had followed me, and now I was trapped. The cabin felt like a cage. I needed a plan, but my mind raced in circles. Should I make a run for it or wait them out? Would they enter, or were they just keeping watch? Then I heard a sound that sent ice through my veins, a low growl that seemed to rise from the very ground. The watchers were not alone. I took a step back, heart hammering, knowing I had little time left. I had to choose, confront what lurked outside or find a way to escape. But just as I turned to look for an exit, I saw something in the darkness. Someone, or something, was already inside the cabin. I stiffened, frozen in place. The shape in the corner of the cabin was indistinct at first, a shadow among shadows. My flashlight beam flickered, the light wavering as if sensing the heaviness in the air. I held my breath, straining to see clearly. Then the figure stepped into the light and my heart sank. It was a person, a woman. But her clothes were tattered, as if she had been lost in these woods for ages. Her eyes were wild, darting between the window and me. A mixture of fear and desperation etched across her face. "Please," she whispered urgently, her voice barely audible. "You have to hide. They'll come for us. They always do." "Who?" I managed to croak out, my throat dry. I glanced back at the window, hoping the shadows were still out there and hadn't crept too close. "It doesn't matter. Just trust me." Her fear was palpable, and it made my own pulse quicken. "They can sense you. You can't make a sound. Not now." The ground beneath us trembled lightly, the growl I had heard before rumbling again, echoing through the wood. It was closer now, deep yet almost melodic, like a distant thunder. The woman moved toward me, her eyes wide with urgency. "If they find you, it's all over." I didn't know what to do. I fumbled for the note on the table, but it felt irrelevant now. This woman seemed to know something important. "We need to get out," I whispered back, but I couldn't shake the uncertainty. "No!" She shook her head, stepping closer. "We can't. Not while it's out there. We have to wait." Her voice trembled as the growl drew nearer, vibrating through the floor. "We have to be quiet." Another rustle outside. The woman's gaze shot to the window. Instinctively, I moved back against the wall, trying to become as small as possible. If they were searching, then staying silent and hidden was all I could do. In the silence that followed, I strained to listen. The footsteps shuffled closer, the low growling harmonizing with the crack of branches. I exchanged a worried glance with the woman. She looked terrified, her eyes flickering between the door and the window, but there was also something kindled in them, maybe survival instinct, maybe determination. And then I noticed it. From the corner of the cabin, another shadow moved, slinking toward us. My heart pounded in disbelief. "We're not alone," I said, barely more than a whisper. The woman turned, eyes wide. "Stay back. Whatever you do, don't let it see you." But it was too late. Before I could look away, a creature stepped partially into the beam of my flashlight. Its eyes glowed, dark and unsettling. Long limbs stretched out from its body, ending in sharp, claw-like fingers. It paused, tilting its head as if it could smell the air. I swallowed hard, fear coursing through me like icy water. I was trapped, no escape, no options. That was when I realized the silence outside had disappeared. It had turned into muffled chaos. And then everything went dark. I gasped as the darkness enveloped us, swallowing any last traces of light. The growling noise grew louder, vibrating like an oppressive rhythm all around. My mind raced. I scrambled to rally my thoughts, fighting against the panic welling up inside me. The woman was still beside me, her presence a fragile anchor. "What do we do?" I whispered, my voice trembling. She didn't reply at first, her wide eyes darting around the dark cabin. "Stay low," she finally breathed. "If they can't see you, they might leave. We just have to wait." As if echoed by the creature lurking outside, a loud crash resonated against the cabin's walls. My heart raced, and I instinctively pressed myself against the floor. I felt the chill of the wooden boards against my skin, but I was too terrified to care. "I can't," I started, but another sharp sound made me cut myself off. It was as if something massive brushed against the cabin's side. Then, in the gloom, a sliver of moonlight broke through the cracks in the boards. It illuminated the floor, casting eerie shadows that flickered like the wild movements of the creature outside. I could barely make out the outline of the woman next to me, her breath steadying as she resolved herself to the silence. A muffled howl split the night, and the woman clenched her fists, biting back a flinch. I felt her fear radiate through the stillness, and something inside me shifted. I had no idea what was out there, but I had to know. "We can't just wait. Something's coming," I said, wanting to push myself forward, but fear held me down. "It will hear us," she hissed back, panic flashing across her features. "No matter what, don't move." Footsteps thudded heavily, synchronized with that low, growling hum. Whether they were coming from within or outside, I couldn't tell. The woman's frantic expression and my own dread made me feel cornered, trapped in a cage with no way out. I reached back to grab the flashlight. Focusing on the light was my best option. I could barely keep it steady as my hands trembled. Suddenly a sudden rush of grit filled my mouth, and I gagged, a mixture of dirt and fear. A figure loomed in front of me, brighter than shadows, and I flicked the flashlight on. For a brief moment, both the woman and I froze, bathed in that pale beam. The creature outside had something in its hand, something small, too small to be a limb. It dropped whatever it was, and the sound echoed in the timbre of the night. "We need to get out now," I urged. But before I could think of a plan, the woman grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly tight. "They're coming. They're always coming," she breathed, her eyes locking onto mine with an overwhelming intensity. "You must trust me." And then I saw it, the outline of another shadow, creeping to our cabin door. My breath hitched as the beast turned towards us, its glowing eyes as penetrating as a knife. "Run!" I shouted. But the woman's grip tightened even more, even as time slowed, every moment stretching longer than it should have, as panic clawed at my chest. Before I could pull free, the door burst open, and cold air rushed into the cabin, bringing with it an overwhelming stench, sharp and rancid. I dared a glance back at the woman, and she whispered, "Just another second." That's when I saw the creature fully for the first time. It wasn't just fierce, it was twisted, almost human in its features, yet grotesque in its form, and it was staring right at me. Everything froze. My heart raced, each beat echoing in the heavy silence that settled around us. The creature's eyes glowed with a feral hunger, and I could feel its gaze piercing through me, paralyzing my thoughts. This wasn't just a beast. It was something aware, something that thrived on the fear it instilled. The woman clutched my arm tighter, her face a mixture of terror and determination. "We need to move now," she hissed, and somehow her urgency broke the spell. I nodded, adrenaline surging through me. We bolted past her, adrenaline propelling us toward the open door. I could feel the shadows closing in behind me as we stumbled out of the cabin, branches clawing at my clothes, the thick underbrush clawing at my feet, as if the forest itself didn't want us to escape. The growling intensified behind us, vibrating through the earth and echoing through my bones. The chill of fear had taken root in my stomach, but there was no time to dwell on it. We dashed off the porch and toward the path that led deeper into the woods, illuminated sporadically by the ghostly glow of the moon through the canopy. "Where are we going?" I shouted, my breath quickening. The woman barely glanced back, focusing intently ahead. "Just keep running, away from the cabin," she yelled, urgency cutting through her voice. I could hear distant footsteps behind us, lighter but drawing closer. More figures joining the hunt, perhaps. The darkness swirled around us, shadows dancing on the edges of my vision as fear clawed at my mind, trying to force me to turn back, to look. But we couldn't stop. I didn't dare look behind me. If I did, I feared what I would see. If the woman knew that being hunted could bring something more dangerous than mere shadows, she didn't let it show. After what felt like an eternity of running, we burst into another clearing. To our right lay another path, wide and overgrown, but it felt familiar. I had seen it earlier on my way to the cabin. My heart raced. We were close to the exit, but the growling grew louder. "Which way?" I breathed, panting as sweat trickled down my temples. The woman hesitated for a moment, eyes darting between the two paths. "Left! Trust me!" She didn't need to say it twice. I sprinted down that path, my legs feeling heavy with dread. The darkness felt oppressively alive, like a living creature breathing down my neck, the shadows shifting in its wake. With every step, the sense of foreboding deepened. The trees seemed to close in around us, the whispers growing louder. I couldn't be sure, but the forest sounded as if it were commiserating with the creatures that stalked us. I wanted to scream back at the whispers, to demand they let us pass. Just as I opened my mouth, the woman tugged at my arm again. "Keep going," she urged, curling her fingers around my wrist, tightening her grip. Then, in a sudden twist of fate, the growl transformed into a shriek that reverberated through the trees. The cacophony rose and fell like a tide, a sound both haunting and filled with an unnatural rage. "I think we're losing them," I gasped, glancing over my shoulder. The women's eyes sparkled with fear, but there was something more. Was it hope? Before she could answer, the ground beneath us trembled as shadows began to materialize from the depths of the forest, darting into our path. The air became electrified, a heavy tension tangling around us like a net. I felt a surge of desperation. We couldn't stop now. There had to be a way out. A flash of recognition sparked in me. The main trail. If I could make it to the clearing where I had parked my car, I might escape. "Just a little further," I shouted, my voice raw as I pushed ahead, pulling the woman along with me. The figures began to emerge fully, their shapes shifting into more tangible forms, some human-like, others twisted and monstrous. My mind raced with questions, each shadow revealing a piece of a larger puzzle, but I couldn't stop to decipher them. We darted deeper into the woods, the path narrowing, branches whipping at our shoulders. As I pushed forward, I spotted a flicker of light peeking through the greenery ahead. It was the clearing. "Almost there!" I called out, bursting through into the light. The moon hung low and bright, illuminating my abandoned campsite. My car was parked just nearby, a promise of safety. But the relief faded the instant I turned. The shadows encroached, their howls assailing my ears in a final desperate throw. The growls morphed again, twisting into whispers, and I realized I could no longer hear the woman's footsteps beside me. "Where are you?" I yelled, rounding on the encroaching darkness, my heart pounding. The shadows were all around me, closing in, and all I could see were those haunting eyes. "Get in the car! Now!" I heard her voice, strained with urgency, piercing through the veil of terror. I didn't hesitate. I sprinted to the car, fumbling in my pocket for the keys. With trembling hands, I unlocked the door and dove inside, slamming it shut just as a shadow lunged forward, crashing against the window. The breath caught in my throat as I turned to see the woman sprinting towards me, darting amid the chaos of shadowy limbs and ghostly figures. She threw herself into the passenger seat, panting as she slammed the door shut. "Go!" she shouted through gasps. I didn't need to be told twice. I threw the key into the ignition, and the engine roared to life, filling the air with a mechanical scream that rivaled the growls outside. Desperation propelled me forward. I swung the car around fiercely, the headlights cutting through the darkness as I tore out of the campsite and down the winding path. As we sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror, the shadows losing their grip, retreating into the woods. The chilling voices faded into the wind, their mournful howls replaced by the sound of my racing heart. But as the familiar expanse of the road unfolded ahead, relief washed over me, though it mingled with unresolved questions. Who were those figures? What had really pursued me in those woods? I turned to my passenger, but her gaze remained fixed on the forest retreating behind us, her expression unreadable. We drove in silence, the weight of an unsettling truth lingering in the air. Part of me wanted to ask what she knew, what horrors lay just beyond the edge of the trees. But I knew instinctively she didn't hold all the answers either. And as we faded into the night, I realized some mysteries would remain, the whispers of the woods echoing forever in the back of my mind. Whether it was the shadows that haunted the forest or the fears we faced, both were a part of me now, shaping my view of the world as I drove away from that place, unchanged, yet somehow altered all the same.